I actually have a little bit of a hard time saying this with a straight face, but here it is. No, this is not gonna be one of my many headphone reviews. One I did so many that you already kinda seem to get annoyed by. No, this video is gonna be something entirely different. Well, what? A gaming headset review. Yes, I know, but which one? Well, the Corsair HS50. They cost roughly 60 bucks, and how good are they? Well, that's exactly what we are here for, to find out. So let's just go into that. But before we are going into the headphones, let's check the adapter here. 20 centimeters long, about that, which you can connect to the PC and then plug in your microphone and also headset. Now, otherwise we get this detachable microphone, which is something that I always like a lot, because if you don't want to use this as a headset, but just as a regular headphone, you can. And if you have the microphone, it's very flexible and it works just nice. But we will talk about that a little bit later on. But before we are going into the headset itself, let's talk about the cable, which is obviously not detachable, because in this price range, you can't really expect that. But the cable itself, about 185 centimeters long, quality-wise is absolutely fine. And it is quite thick, flexible. So yeah, good job. Now, good job also, I have to say, absolutely for the design, because it doesn't look over the top, actually very elegant. It's also available in different colors, and even though I wanted the black one, I have to say by now I really like the blue accents here, especially here for the stitching and so on, and it looks nice, but definitely not too much, and this could get away as just as a normal pair of headphones. So kudos to that. Now, not maybe that much kudos to the cushioning here at the top, because even though it looks very thick, it's just a few millimeters and not that soft, where it gets already quite hard quite early. But that is not a huge deal. I will get into why a little bit later on. Now, otherwise in terms of build quality, it seems fine, because of course the outer shell is mostly plastic with this as well. And here we get some fake leather, which feels absolutely nice with the Corsair stitching. This though is metal, and therefore it's quite flexible. And no, maybe not rotatable, but enough swivel to adjust it to your head. What I also like a lot is that the headband adjustment actually shows numbers, and it works out quite well. It's not super stiff, but it's usually fine, and you shouldn't really adjust it by accident. One thing that you might though by accident adjust is the mute button for the microphone, because I noticed sometimes when I just want to readjust the headphone, I push this button. Not a huge deal, and you will get used to that. And one thing that I like a lot is the volume scroll wheel, because it's not too loose, and you should not change this by accident, and it just works very nice. Of course, here you can attach the microphone, as I showed already. Now let's talk about one thing that I have to applaud them for, which is the cutout for the ear cups, because very big, every ear should pretty much easily fit into this. But the only thing that I would really wish for is those ear cups to be roughly a centimeter bigger, fatter, just thicker, because then I think it would be even more so comfortable, because they don't really have too much space. And once I actually put it on, I just have to mention one thing. The overall comfort is nice, especially since it's very lightweight and it doesn't have too much clamping force. But I think if they would have had thicker ear pads, there would be just way more room to actually properly mold over your head. Otherwise, like I said, this is quite hard, but since it's so lightweight and most of the weight will get just held up by the ear cups, this is a non-issue at all, and it can be adjusted quite big. And it's actually very subtle on your head. You can use it for hours and hours. And due to the fact that this though doesn't isolate all that well, because it is not quite as thick, like I said, it has one benefit. It allows for some breathing, even though this is a closed headphone and we have leather in the summer. It could get a little bit warm, but otherwise it actually felt quite cool to the touch, even though it's also not thick and doesn't allow for so much ventilation. It never felt to be an issue, so it was comfortable actually on a good level for a long period of time. But I think if they would make the top band cushioned a little bit thicker, and especially the ear cups, they could bump up the overall comfort even one step more higher easily. And then we have the fit that is absolutely fine, because it never felt out in terms of anything. Now, isolation. Like I said, it's not perfect just because it doesn't mold up quite me. So even though I hear myself quite muffled due to the closed headphone aspect, anyways, it could be even better, but I don't want it actually too isolated. It's not always perfect. Of course, leakage will be there, but if you play games, this should not really be an issue. Before we are going into that, in terms of sound and microphone, let's talk about how easy it is to drive. And yes, the answer is very easy. If you have a decent sound card, this should be no problem at all. It was actually very easy to drive, quite an efficient driver. So you don't need a great amp. If you have one, it improves a little bit, not too much, but there is some potential more to be left, to be kind of used. Now, let's talk about the mic now. Okay, so this would be the mic test of the Corsair HS50. As usual, I like the fact a lot that the microphone is detachable, but also due to the flexible arm, very easy to position wherever you want it to for the best results. But just as a tip already up front, don't put it too close to the mouth like I will do now. Because even though the sound now gets a lot richer with more body to it and it doesn't sound quite as distant anymore, it also picks up breathing noise and P sounds a lot more. So you can hear that right about now. So be sure to put it a little bit off axis, not too close to the mouth, because even though with this you will lose a little bit kind of sound in general, it sounds even further away than it is already, which is a little bit too distant. Otherwise, I would say though the mic quality is okay, it's passable, it sounds quite clean and it gets the job done. But besides the fact that it picks up keyboard sounds and mouse sounds a lot, like you will hear now, my main issue actually is the quite high main bass noise floor, which you will hear when I do nothing. Because this can be a little bit distracting, especially now when I monitor all the things that I said right about now, recording it on my Zoom H1 where I can hear what I say, which then is a little bit distracting. I guess it will do the job just fine for games and such, but I always use the same recording device to keep things constant. And in this, it just shows a little bit more, actually significantly more of a white noise than some other ones, but otherwise, it's okay. Okay, so now that you've heard the demo, all I can say is that I like that it's detachable, I like that it's very flexible, and it sounds overall quite okay. I would wish for it not to sound quite as distant, a little bit richer and fuller, but for normal games, it should get the job just done fine. Now let's talk about soundstage when it also comes to the imaging and gaming. And here I have to say, due to the general V-shape with a lot of highs, actually it seems to brighten up the whole soundstage, which makes it feel artificially bigger than it is. Because in general, I have to say the soundstage is on an absolutely solid level in this price range. It's not too big, which is obviously not a thing just because it's closed. But let me actually explain this in the easiest to understand way. If you play with these, in terms of hearing footsteps and location and so on, up to a price of around 100, you won't really miss out on anything, because if you use a HyperX Cloud 2, a Cloud Alpha, or maybe even the cheaper, which is the direct competitor Cloud Stinger, all of those will pretty much give you the same kind of experience. You won't be better with either one and you won't be worse with either one, which just isn't really possible in this price range because they all cook with water. If you want something noticeably better in terms of imaging especially, you need something like the Biodynamic MX300, which can actually mold your map visually and audibly into your head, which is just incredible. But for 60 bucks, I cannot complain at all, because you can hear footsteps, you can locate them quite well, like I said, just about as good as you can do with all the other ones, so this is not a thing. But what you can do with this is actually enjoy a little bit of an easier time playing games, for one reason that I've noticed compared to the clouds. The clouds, for example, in CSGO, all sound a little bit muffled. Also something like the Biodynamic, they all kind of therefore feel smaller than they are. With the highs being pushed here a little bit more, and also the bass, it feels like this is easier to play with, because everything feels just bright, a little bit more open, actually a little bit more airy, which is something that I could appreciate once I had this for a little bit of a while. Now, since the bass is pushed as well, you get all those kind of explosions and all those gunshots and all very well. I know not actually all competitive gamers want that. They don't want bass, they just want to hear those footsteps, but this is still there. What I like though is the fact that they balanced out one thing a lot. Actually very nice, because usually, for example, if you have a certain amount of volume so you can hear footsteps very well, then gunshots in some cases already sound super loud, but they sound just about as loud on this one here. So nothing is really louder, nor the effects nor footsteps or anything. It feels nicely balanced out in case you want that. And this is where I have to say I like this more than on the clouds, and it doesn't really matter on which one, because those didn't quite balance that out that well. Overall experience though will be quite similar, as I said, and it really comes down to personal preference. Of course, you can adjust some things maybe in your sound card and so on, but I have to say, for a budget gaming headset for this price, I actually enjoyed the gaming experience quite a lot due to the way they balance sounds, because you still have a very nice action-packed gaming experience. You can still hear all the sound effects, you can locate them quite well, and nothing is really out of the ordinary. So actually really good job done. Now when it comes to music though, here I have to give a clear win towards the clouds, because those in that case feel noticeably better balanced. Because one thing that gets very obvious here is the significant V shape, because you have a lot more bass, actually a little, not really more than on the clouds, but it feels more in kind of relation to the rest, because also the highs are pushed. And then one thing just is recessed, which are the mids where vocals mostly happen until we get to the higher ones, which this is my main issue here with the sound for music. Vocals sound just too distant. They sound just too pushed away and a little bit overweighted, a little bit overshadowed by the bass and also the highs. The highs, I have no complaints. They are quite clear, detailed for this price range, absolutely on a nice level, roughly like the clouds do. But in terms of bass, it just can't compete, because the bass is just not quite as controlled, it's not quite as detailed, doesn't have quite the same resolution. It feels a little bit more lush, it feels a little bit kind of lean and with a little bit more oomph. In case you like that, for EDM music and everything with bass, it's not quite the tight bass that the clouds offer, but it feels in general a little bit richer. And if you like that, it's fine, but it never sounds muffled, which is something that I really know to appreciate because of the clear highs. But vocals will suffer. Keep that in mind. You sometimes with an equalizer can adjust that, but for music, I definitely prefer the clouds. But let's get already into the conclusion. $60. What are the good sides and the bad sides? Well, I definitely like the design. I like the detachable microphone, the cable is fine, you get the adapter, you get the controls, and you get a really nice comfort, because just for the fact that the cutouts are so much bigger, wider, these actually feel better for long-term use, because at some point the clouds just feel to warm up more, unless you use for the Cloud 2 maybe the velour pads. This feels actually like it would allow for some more breathing space, and it never really feels so much trapped in, like for example on the clouds, where I think the pads could be even bigger, because they aren't really smaller here, but they just don't have the give, they just don't push quite so much, so they kind of feel smaller on the clouds. Then you get a really nice, what I would call kind of brighter, artificially opened up sound signature, which is really nice for gaming. I actually like that a lot. The microphone is fine on a typical level for this price range. Maybe music not so much suited for that, so it's not a perfect all-rounder, but since it is a gaming headset after all, which is its main focus, it does the job really nice. You can obviously still listen to music. If you want something more neutral, or let's say a little bit more balanced out, then I would still kind of recommend maybe the HyperCloud Stinger, which for this job is the next best solution, because that one just didn't quite have the emphasis of just playing games. It was a little bit better just in general suited for music, but even compared to the clouds, to the Cloud 2s or the Cloud Alphas, this one really wins in terms of really nice comfort, design, and an overall very nice experience. So I won't really call it better than the Cloud 2s, because the Cloud 2s still have the slightly better sound signature, because it's a little bit more refined. This one just makes it at first seem better. But I really liked it because it's not one of the many headphones that just feel overburdened in terms of bass, and that being not kind of held up with the highs. They really balanced out the extreme bass or the elevated bass with also kind of just about as elevated highs. Mids though suffer for that, but you always have to pay some price, make some compromise. But for $60, yeah, I'm actually very, very pleased. And I would say now I'm gonna finish the video. Until next time, bye.